Welcome to the YouTube channel for my new book, Seed of Israel, DNA Guide to Tracing Your Jewish Ancestry, available on Amazon in ebook and paperback versions. Links to order your copy are below. Also, be sure to hit that subscribe button to get more videos like this. In this video, I'm going to talk about how Ashkenazi Jews mostly descend from Jews in southern Italy, specifically in the Apulia region of southern Italy. Also, to a lesser extent, Jews in southern France, who most likely were also originally Jews in southern Italy in the Roman Empire. So basically Roman Jews. So these Jews in southern Italy and also in southern France migrated north to the Rhineland region of Germany during the Middle Ages, and I'm going to show you some examples, some evidence of this. And this really aligns again, which is what I discussed in my book, and which I've talked about in previous videos, about the Rhineland theory of Jewish migration, basically from Israel, from Judah. It's called Judah, Kingdom of Judah. The Romans called it the Roman province of Judea. So basically during the Roman period, and also earlier times, when Jews were spread across the Mediterranean Diaspora, going way back to Hellenistic times, even back to possibly biblical times in some cases, but especially following the Jewish-Roman Wars, specifically not necessarily Kitos War, but the fall of Jerusalem in 70 CE, and also the defeat of the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135 CE, when Jewish slaves were taken to Rome. And also I've talked about possibly later migrations of Jews from the land of Israel to Europe, possibly after the revolt against Heraclius. And so other times, 5th, 6th centuries CE. It wasn't not one specific time, but there were different time periods when Jews would have made their way to Italy. And then so the Rhineland theory basically says that Jews went from Israel to Italy, up the boot of Italy to France and Germany, and then later on east, I believe starting around the 12th century, to Poland and Lithuania, and then to other areas in Eastern Europe, Central and Eastern Europe. So basically, Ashkenazi Jews were mostly Mediterranean and Middle Eastern. So again, we descend from mostly from Jews in southern Italy who migrated north to Germany and France, and then to east to Poland and Lithuania, as I just stated. So that is why we are genetically similar to Southern Europeans, Levantine Middle Easterners, and other Western diaspora Jews. So again, as I said before, there's historical evidence that Ashkenazi Jews descend from Italian Jews, otherwise called Italkim, including the close relations between Ashkenazi Jews and the Jews of Apulia. So this is taken from a Wikipedia article that says that South Italian Jewry was the original fount of Ashkenazi culture, that the Jews of France and Germany recognized their debt to the Apulian center as late as the 12th century is acknowledged in the proverb quoted by the French Tosaphist Jacob Ben Meyer, quote, "For out of Bari goes forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Otranto." And that's originally Isaiah 2:3. So as you can see, I'm going to show you some screenshots here of some of my ancestry results, DNA ancestry results, from the different admixture calculators, mostly from GEDmatch. So as you can see from my DNA results, I'm fully Ashkenazi Jew, 2 Ashkenazi grandparents, 4 Ashkenazi Jewish grandparents, and going back and back generations. So my ancestry DNA results were 100% Ashkenazi Jewish. So as you can see, I'm very close to populations. I'm very close to South Italians, Sicilians, Maltese, and Greeks. So Southern Europeans, and within that Southern Europe, South Italy, Southern Italy, and Sicily mostly, and then also Malta and Greece. So the history that aligns with the history of the region as well. The Greeks colonized Italy, and it was called Magna Graecia, or Magella Hellas, and that Magna Graecia refers to the coastal areas of southern Italy, which was colonized by various ancient Greek city-states from the 8th to 5th centuries BCE. So the Greeks certainly, left their mark. They left their genetic mark, especially on southern Italy and Sicily. Also, the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians had extensive trading routes across the Mediterranean and colonized southern Italy and Sicily as well. Also, there was Carthage, which is a Punic city, ethnically Phoenician, in Tunisia, and the Phoenicians were from Lebanon, so they were from the Eastern Mediterranean, from Lebanon, modern-day Lebanon, and also the Maghrebi Arabs from North Africa also colonized Sicily and I believe parts of southern Italy, but definitely there was an emirate of Sicily. And so they would have left their mark, including their genetic mark, on southern Europe and specifically southern Italy and Sicily. So and that shows up in DNA testing as southern Italians and Sicilians get elevated levels of Levantine Middle Eastern ancestry that most other European groups don't get. So that is one reason that Ashkenazi Jews are genetically close to Sicilians and Southern Italians. Is Ashkenazi Jews our origins are in the Levant and the land of Israel, and then we picked up some admixture in the Mediterranean Diaspora, some most likely Greco-Roman admixture, possibly from marrying Italian convert wives, and then we were highly endogamous for a long time, all over Europe, in Western Europe, Central Europe, Eastern Europe. Highly endogamous. So most of our ancestry is from the land of Israel and maybe Greece and Italy. Added on to that. So yeah. So but yes. But also again, Sicilian, Southern Italians do get a lot of Levantine, Middle Eastern, West Asian, Middle Eastern ancestry as well. So there's even more evidence that Ashkenazi Jews descend from Southern Italian Jews in Apulia, who migrated north to the Rhineland in the Middle Ages. These Rhineland Jews from southern Italy, as I stated earlier, later migrated to Eastern Europe. The book is titled History and Folklore in a Medieval Jewish Chronicle, the Family Chronicle of Ahimaaz ben Paltiel by Robert Bonfil. So Ahimaaz ben Paltiel, who lived from 1017 to 1060 CE, was a Greco-Italian liturgical poet and author of a family chronicle. The family chronicle of Ahimaaz was composed in Hebrew in Capua, Italy in 1054. And here's an excerpt from the book in Ahimaaz's family chronicle. Quote, many Jews of the former Byzantine dominions, particularly from Apulia, moved to more secure locations. Many took to the road toward the northern regions of Italy and even more towards the highly attractive Rhineland, where immigrants from Italy were among the most prominent new settlers in that period. So there were prominent Jewish families, such as the Kalonimos family, who likely also started out in southern Italy, who were established in Rome and Lucca. And the Kalonimos family would migrate from Lucca and Rome north to Rhineland Palatinate, Rhineland Pfalz. And the Talmudic scholars were from the Kalonimos family, and these learned rabbis taught the Jews there in Mainz, Worms, and Speyer. and helped to develop the Ashkenazi Hasidim, the Hasidics, who were called the Orthodox Jews. And and when I say mines, worms, and spire, those were the main kind of cathedral cities that Jews settled in along the Rhineland in the Middle Ages. So now I'm going to get into this a little bit later in the video when I talk about the Jews from southern France, who lived in southern France, who migrated to the Rhineland. But there's a question: were there some Babylonian Jews that were present in the Rhineland during the Middle Ages? There was a lot of interaction with the center of Judaism in Babylon, which is modern day Iraq. So let's see. There was and so in this chronicle the family chronicle that I discussed, there's two genealogical passages found in the commentary on the prayer book by Rabbi Eliezer ben Judah of Worms, who died circa 1230. So the author refers to him as Aaron, or Abu Aharon, or Ibn Aharon, son of our Shemuel, the patriarch Hanasi, quote, who came from Babylonia because of an event that occurred and was compelled to go around wandering, unquote. So according to these passages, Aharon transmitted his secret knowledge in Luca, quote, where he met, unquote, Rabbi Eliezer's ancestor Moses ben Kalanimus, the poet, Rav Moshe HaPeitin, who was, quote, the first to immigrate from Italy, unquote, together with the prominent sages settled by Charlemagne in Mainz. So, yeah. So this Aharon, or Abu Aharon, or Ibn Aharon, they possibly came from Babylonia. So, how many instances were that of examples of that, of Babylonian Jews who made their way to Western Europe? And so here, and then I'm going to quote from a book called Jews in the Medieval German Kingdom by Alfred Haverkamp. And it says, a number of early Jewish settlers in the German kingdom came from the neighboring colonies in northern France, which until the 10th century were but few, recent, and small. The majority hailed from southern Italy, mainly from Byzantine Apulia, where Jewish learning, favored by its Greek cultural setting, had its highest level in Western Europe until the early 12th century, and from the French Midi, which is basically means southern France on the Mediterranean coast, where excellent centers of Jewish learning could equally be found. And I'm going to get into southern France in a little bit, as I stated earlier. It says, for Jews in these Mediterranean lands, who, like many of their Christian neighbors, suffered from continuing Muslim raids until far into the second half of the 10th century, the empire north of the Alps gained attractiveness after the end of the Hungarian incursions. In Byzantine Italy, moreover, Jews had been targets of renewed persecution during the second quarter of the century. And it says Jewish immigration was led by Jewish merchants. They were accompanied by their families and by households, including Jewish servants, as well as non-Jewish servants and slaves. It says a common feature in Christian Jewish households of the Mediterranean. So due to the cultural divide between the South and the North, to the levels of literacy demanded by their religious life, and to their commercial experience, Jews in Ashkenaz, as in northern France and England, particularly during the first centuries of the presence, were better qualified for activities in trade and the monetary economy than their new Christian neighbors. Christian rulers could count on these qualifications. They were ready to grant protection to Jews as an extremely small religious minority in return for exceedingly high contributions, mostly in money payments, which could further rise. Which could further rise when more protection was needed. Realistic alternatives were offered neither within the agrarian economy nor in crafts. Favored by their contacts with the Mediterranean world, some Jews acquired special expertise in the wider field of medicine, which in turn was closely connected to the sciences. Let's see. I'm not going to go into all of this, but let's see. Okay, so here's just a little bit more on the Kalonimos family. It said, the leading role of the Jewish family heads found a decisive support in their mostly biblical and Talmudic learning. The best known example is provided by the Kalonimos family, who probably came to minds around the mid-10th century and whose name points to their origins in southern Italy. So, there were also Jews from southern France, known as French Midi, who joined the southern Italian Jews in the Rhineland. So who were these Jews in southern France? They possibly followed the Roman legions north or migrated north from Italy to France at other periods. So there was possibly a Jewish kingdom called Septimania, although scholars question whether this Jewish kingdom existed, but there were certainly it was a center of Jewish learning in Narbonne, in Septimania, and there's no question about that. The question is whether this Jewish kingdom existed. But I'm going to talk about this Jewish kingdom, and again, I encourage you to follow the links and to do your own research. So, the Jewish kingdom of Septimania, this medieval kingdom in southern France arose in the 8th century. Thriving for 140 years under the rule of 6 extraordinarily competent Jewish kings. So Septimania was a large land located in the French Midi, nestled just north of the Pyrenees, and it was given its name because veterans of the Roman 7th Legion, Septimania, settled there when they retired. So the Septimania encompassed the major cities of Narbonne, Toulouse, and Sarkasani. So, and again, it was nestled between the Catholic Franks to the north and the Islamic Moors to the south. And so basically, there was a I'm not going to go into the whole story of Septimania, but the story is basically that the first king was a Babylonian exilarch whose name was Natroni ben Zabinai, which is a Persian name. And the exilarch was considered, in essence, to be the king of the Jews in exile, and his word and decisions were law. So he brought the entire Babylonian Talmud to the west from memory, it says. And he took the Hebrew name of Mechir. So Mechir ben Yehuda Zakkai of Narbonne, from 725 to 765 CE. So apparently the story goes that he at the request of King Charles, who otherwise known as Charlemagne, the king of the Franks, who followed Pepin, he this Mechir was supposedly a direct descendant of David, King David. So he was a royal lineage of the Davidic line. So basically, King Charlemagne had an aunt named Alda, and he requested that Mechir marry his aunt Alda, apparently because to keep the royal lineage in the family. So, and then I'm just going to briefly go into the term the Hakme province, which the Kalonimos family was helped develop that as well, including in addition to the Ashkenazi Hasidim. So the Hakme province refers to the Jewish rabbis of Provence, a province in Aquitania that was a great Torah center in the time of the Tosafis. The phrase literally means the wise ones of province. Hakam, wise one, sage, is a Sephardic and Hakme provincial term for a rabbi. In matters of halakha, as well as in the traditions and custom, the provincial rabbis occupy an intermediate position between the Sephardic Judaism of the neighboring Spanish scholars and the Old French, similar to the Nusach Ashkenazi tradition represented by the Tosafos. The term province in Jewish tradition is not limited to today's administrative region and province, but refers to the whole Aquitania. This includes Narbonne, which I mentioned earlier, as Narbonne is a city in the Septimania, which possibly there was a Jewish kingdom, although scholars do debate that. So Narbonne, Lunel, and the city of Montpellier, not far from the Mediterranean coast. So it also included cities which at that time formed part of the Catalan political and cultural domain, such as Perpignan. In some ways, the Jewish traditions of Catalonia were closer to those of Provence than to those of the Kingdom of Castile and Al-Andalus. And lastly, I'm just going to wrap it up by just briefly describing what a Tosafos is. Tosafos were medieval rabbis from France and Germany who are among those known in Talmudical scholarship as Rishonim. There were also Rishonim in Spain. And these Tosafos created critical and explanatory glosses, questions, notes, interpretations, rulings, and sources on the Talmud. So these were collectively called Tosafat, or additions, because they were additions on the commentary of Rashi. So again, just to summarize, there is a lot of historical evidence as well as genetic evidence that Ashkenazi Jews who developed about 900 years ago, Ashkenazi in the Rhineland region of Germany, towns, cathedral cities like Mainz, Worms, and Speyer, that these Jews were descended from Jews in southern Italy, specifically the region of Apulia, who migrated north to settle in the Rhineland. Also, in addition to southern Italy, some Jews in southern France, which is a major Jewish learning center, possibly who were part of the Jewish kingdom of Septimania, but certainly there were a lot of Jews in France at the time, southern France. They also migrated to Rhineland. So now I can get in another video, I'll get into, well, were there existing Jewish communities in the Rhineland? And most likely there were, possibly smaller communities, but it really I believe this just goes more and more to prove more evidence that really goes to prove the Rhineland theory of Jewish migration from Israel to Italy to Germany to Eastern Europe. And so this is just more evidence of that we and that's why, again, genetically we're very close to Southern Europeans, other Western diaspora Jews such as Italian Jews, who are known as Italkim, Sephardic Jews, North African Jews from Morocco, Libya, Algeria, Tunisia, and Greek Jews, Romanaiot. We were also somewhat close to Levantine Middle Easterners, which is where we originated from, the Levant. So we're talking, Lebanese Christians, Lebanese Muslims, Lebanese Druze, other Carmel Druze, Israeli Druze, Samaritans, Israeli Arabs, Palestinian Arabs, Jordanians, Syrians, Assyrians. So we're very close to these populations as well. And thank you for watching.